If you're a regular listener to the Unregistered podcast, you need to become a member of the Unregistered Underground, which is the supporting listeners program for the Unregistered podcast. Go to patreon.com/unregistered and you will see for a ridiculously low monthly price, you will get the following benefits. You get the monthly show Unreported, which is our brand new news show in which I react to news videos of the day. It's hosted by Landry Harmon. It's the most fun I've had in a long, long time, getting to talk about the news as a guest finally on a show. You also get monthly AMAs in which members of the Underground ask the questions and I respond in a video. Also, there will be bonus episodes, which are not released to the public, of the Unregistered podcast. The first bonus episode for the new Underground is with Hotep Jesus, one of the fan favorites. You also get access to our private groups on Telegram and Facebook. And for the second level, you get to attend our weekly Zoom meetings, which are called Unregistered Live. It's me and all the members of the Underground hanging out on Thursday nights. It's a total blast. We've been doing it for about a year now, and there are more and more people joining. So go to patreon.com/unregistered and join now. Thank you. It has been said that freedom is found at the point of a gun. My guest this week knows better than anybody whether that's true. From the Renegade University Weekend in Texas, this is my interview with Cody Wilson. This is the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. This is a show about ideas, people, and behaviors that are considered inappropriate, out of bounds, or beyond the pale. The things you're not supposed to talk about if you're a school teacher, a college professor, a businessman, a politician, a parent, a neighbor, or even a podcast host. These are the things you're not supposed to say or even think if you're a good liberal, a good conservative, or a good citizen. Each week, I'll interview a person who has something bad to say. They might be a journalist or a professor. They might be a porn star or a drug dealer. They might just be an ordinary person with an ordinary job who doesn't care about the rules of polite society. I'm not interested in breaking the rules just to be a troublemaker. I'm interested in people who break the rules of conventional thought and to expand the scope of what is possible to say in our society. I'm interested in people who make me think. Cody Wilson, I've been told by the national media that you are one of the most dangerous people on the internet.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we have the same lawyer as you do.
You're welcome.
And I actually have that lawyer because of him. But yeah, so no, I just want to talk about my dating life, if you don't mind, for a minute. So I'm on Bumble in the Bay Area, and I got a few months ago, I got just a woman just messaged me just out of the blue on the app and said, oh, a Renegade in quotes university, huh? Where you teach people how to make illegal guns, huh? You're a bunch of incels. I said, well, when can I meet you for coffee? And the answer is next week. Just kidding.
You got the date.
Yeah, I got the digits. No,
Congratulations.
So I have noticed, and then when we at Renegade University in, was it April this year? We had a course with Control Pugh, who Cody knows, who's kind of a big figure in the 3D gun world. And it was our second most popular course, but it was also the most hated course. I got many messages from people saying that this was the end. They could no longer go with me or go with RU. This is just too much. And not just the chick on the dating app. Yeah, it's been out there, and it's the most nuclear. I mean, look, we do nothing that's not, pretty much everything we do is controversial in some way or another, right? But this has been the most nuclear of all the issues, of all the course's topics that we deal with. That course, though, was amazing, and there's actually several people here who took that course, and they made gorgeous guns, including a gun with the RU logo on the grip, which is my favorite thing ever. And that's actually featured in the trailer for that course. But anyway, Cody Wilson's here. And yes, Wired Magazine has named him one of the most dangerous people on the internet several times. And I think that might be true. Cody Wilson, speak for yourself. What do you have to say?
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Are you dangerous?
I don't think so.
Yeah, you are.
No, I think I'm a polite person, and the guns and the polite society and everything. So I think I'm dangerous because I can't be kind of dissuaded, maybe, which is like what the internet was about, and it's 90s commanding heights or something. Like what are the kind of weird things you're going to find on the internet? There's not many of those things left, but 3D printed guns, it's kind of known as one of the bad neighborhoods of the internet. So I'm happy about that. Maybe that neighborhood's dangerous, but I don't have much to do with that right now.
Well, aren't you a danger to the regime?
No, man.
I'm talking you up here.
No, I mean, look, guys, I don't know. Look, we run DefCAD. Of course. DefCAD's the only legal place where you can download 3D guns right now. What else do? We confuse the regime, the apparatus. So even if it doesn't recognize us as dangerous, it certainly recognizes that it is confused and does not know how to contain. So that's fun. That's good. And every year, it's like a new crop of DOJ attorneys, Department of State attorneys who kind of have forgotten how long and involved and complex this fight has been. And so they mess up. And it's like this continuous integral accident where it's just too complicated now for anyone to really fathom, let alone like a federal judge or the Department of State. So it's this permanent wreck on the internet. And then I think conceiving of it that way originally was the best and like most creative direction. So, it's impossible to contain. And so its anarchist potentiality is what makes it, that intention, that potentiality, that's why it's dangerous.
It's impossible to contain. And it's spreading rapidly. I have a good friend of mine in Oakland's a longtime drug dealer there, and he has told me repeatedly that he's seeing ghost guns all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, the number one, so we do a number of things. We have Ghost Gunner and ghostguns.com and DefCAD. Like, okay, if it's ghosty, we have like a role to play now. And so that means a number of things. It doesn't just mean printed guns. It means kit guns, like the Palmer 80, PF P940C, and gangbangers love this gun, right? This is basically a kit gun in the mail. It's a Glock in a box, basically. And ATF figured that out, waited for Trump to lose the election, and they tried to put a ceiling on it, and they try to indict and put all these grand juries together to stop the kit gun thing in the mail because, look, Oakland figured that out. You know what I mean? Baltimore figured that out, Chicago, et cetera. And it hasn't stopped yet. They're actually waiting for a rule to pass at the end of the year. Ghost guns are where it's at, for sure. But ghost means a lot of different things. To the politician, it means a gun without a serial number, which has always been a thing. I'd love to take this in any direction you want. But ghosty is like the internet and the ghost gun phenomena. I mean, there's a dozen ways to get back to Rome now. It's a buffet of options, and that's kind of what's more upsetting to them than just the idea that you can make your own gun. That there's just so many avenues.
So let's do the history, if you don't mind. I know we've talked about this before when you're on the show. So you've been fighting the man, the law, the government, or they've been fighting you since 2012. Defense Distributed was established then, right?
I picked a fight in 2012.
Oh, you picked a fight. Okay.
Well, you'll get it too. That's a lesson, if nothing else, from Renegade University. Like, if you want to fight the government, don't worry. You'll get to. And you want me to just say
no? I'm just pondering that for a second there. I mean, you knew what was coming your way when you picked the fight.
I was just dumb, I was like, I wanted to fight, When you're young, you want to fight.
How old were you then?
You got hot blood.
How old were you in 2012 when you founded Defense Distributed?
23, 24.
Jesus.
24, maybe.
See, this is something to keep in mind here. This is a pretty important fact.
You got to be dumb enough to think you can do it. It's the number one,
But you did do it.
Somehow, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this before we get into it. Do you regret this?
No.
Do you regret that decision?
The only meaning I have in my life now is this like wonderful, annihilation that I brought upon myself and reconstructed. I've had to live and die a few times now, and I think that's beautiful. And I saw that Chappelle special the other night. Like, I'm having a human experience. It feels great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel alive. So
I can see that. I can see that. You've been dead and alive a few times. So 2012, you established Defense Distributed. Now, the thing I don't know about Cody Wilson, I don't think we've ever talked about this at all. I don't know why, but like, I don't know really anything about you up until that point. And we can do the biography, but actually I'm even more interested in your sort of intellectual development during that time. I mean, you went to college, right? Central Arkansas. And you studied English or majored in English. I know that just from your Wikipedia page, but I don't know what your thinking was during that time and up until when you were 24. Who were you? What was going on?
A shitty liberal like everybody else. And, I was interested in Ron Paul in 2008 and then, again, coming to 2012. But I read like Habermas, like Philosophical Discourse of Modernity. And, when you do lit, you read a lot of Foucault just because that's what's fashionable, or like queer theory, things like that. So I kind of backed myself in to libertarianism through Marx just because, I don't know, I was bored,
Did you find libertarianism on your own, or was there someone who helped you?
It's like, I think it's the Habermas-Hoppe pathway, which is not much discussed. It's normally that alt-right pipeline they talk about, but it works the other direction too. Anyway, I took the fast track ladder up to Hoppe, and I was like, oh, this is great, and so I kind of did a little Rothbard and everything.
But how did you even hear about them? Like, I'd never heard their names until I was like 45 years old.
I think Hoppe studied directly under Jürgen Habermas, if I'm not mistaken.
Did he?
Yeah.
That actually sounds right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
so you found it through that connection.
Just doing the Philosophical Discourse of Modernity, like whatever, a rough course in Nietzsche, doing some Foucault, and, I'm like, oh, okay, there's like actually here's what Hoppe has to say about things. And then I discovered I was kind of a weird libertarian. Maybe I'm like underplaying it a little bit, but I met Pete Iyer, if you guys know about Pete Iyer, because he was active at the time. I think he was with Cato like in 2010, 2011 when I met him. So I saw this nexus of like the radicals in New Hampshire doing anti-police stuff where that met in DC. I got a bit of an understanding about like IJ, and I don't know, the internet was like a thinner place in 2010, but so it was like kind of easier to do a survey. I felt, Twitter was only a couple of years old. So you found anybody who was mouthing off on the internet pretty quickly. And that was it. I took a rough survey and decided like WikiLeaks is probably the very best thing happening in the world. So like, what's WikiLeaks for guns? I mean, that's it. You know what I mean?
That was it.
That was it. Yeah.
Why guns? And who were you hanging out with? Because Defense Distributed is not just you. Or was it just you at that time?
I don't know. At one point, it might have just been me.
Yeah.
My buddy Ben Dinio is my co-founder, and we were both into WikiLeaks in a big way. So we were like, what's a new technology that we can put on the internet and kind of do WikiLeaks for guns? Okay, the 3D printer. Why not? And even at the time, we were like, well, 3D printing is kind of a lame way to make a gun, though, right? And it's like, we'll get halfway there, But the fact that technology was so new, it still kind of is new to people, but, it wasn't characterized yet. It had no political quality. So we kind of brought to it a bad reputation.
And why did you choose guns? That issue?
Like I said, we wanted to do something like WikiLeaks. When we saw Cablegate and Bitcoin and all that, we're like, wow, this is it. This is what politics is. So guns was just like our way to do something. I mean, it was no more, I have virtually no experience with firearms at that time, other than just background in your life. I didn't know anything about making them. So we discovered the AR platform and how you make AR receivers. And just by accident, this is like the whole thing. Like I said, you have to be dumb enough to do it. We simply didn't know that I went to a professor of engineering at UT. I was like, I think I can print like a lower receiver. I think I can print a magazine. And she's like, this is impossible. I'm like, it doesn't feel impossible to me. It looks simple. So, and we just built these. In fact, some of the best magazines you can find on the internet right now are still part of that original family. The Cuomo, the Feinstein. And a lot of the AR designs right now still have incorporate some of our geometry. It's just we were just breaking them as fast as we could and then kind of redeploying. It's just like the ethos of open source software development. Break it quickly, let lots of people help you break it, put it back out, ask people to break it.
You have said that 3D guns represent radical equality, which is a left-wing value.
I just thought I was more of a left winger when I started. Maybe I am, horseshoe theory and everything. But so I thought it would be interesting to couch everything in terms of of equality or isonomy, or, you know, like, actually, this isn't right-wing terrorism. This is, you know, this is left-wing terrorism. You know, and like, you know, your interviewer's like, what the fuck? I thought that was fun. And I remember, you know, the very earliest days, they actually took that seriously, because we hadn't quite moved into our final camps, you know, in the Trump era. And I had Cambridge academics and stuff be like, yes, it is left-wing. Yes, it is. You know, fascinating, Mr. Wilson. I don't think anyone buys that anymore. But yeah, that's just kind of that was my instinct about it in the beginning. So it was fun to like talk to gun humpers about like Foucault on Facebook, you know, and they're like, who is this Mr. Foucault? You were just intentionally kind of crossing the wires. And I thought there was something creative and interesting there. Like, people were having a cultural exchange that maybe they were supposed to have, but would never have had the excuse to have before.
Yeah. Well, so what happens when you mix Foucault with gun nuts?
The same shit that would have happened anyway. It's all, as we've seen, it's already homoerotic, you know, to begin with. So, you know, the gun world has plenty of that anyway with the army and stuff. So it's really the same outcome, different coat of paint.
Same outcome.
Yeah. Feels that way to me.
So the Liberator, in 2013, by the way, did you yourself design the Liberator?
No, I won't claim credit. Our engineer, I don't know if he wants to be named, Mr. Sullivan. We'll call him Mr. Sullivan. He engineered Liberator in what was about 3 weeks, and we had insight, because we were kind of stair-stepping our way into Liberator. We were like, oh look, we did an AR receiver. Oh look, we did an AR magazine. And so we just took what we had in our little toy box. And it was like, well, we're pretty good at ARs, so let's just build something on top of an AR receiver with an AR grip. And so we stole a couple things from Thingiverse, and basically because we had just hung out in ARs, we just put a little like cannonade on top of an AR like lower receiver, and that was really it. It took about 3 weeks. It was really not as...
Oh, okay.
We sold it to the media as like, yes.
Oh, so the AR was sort of first, what you were doing.
Yeah, what we did was just, okay, what can we print? We don't know anything about printing. What can we print? Right? Well, let's print a AR receiver, you know? Oh, look. And then you build like an upper on top. This is what the kids do to this very day, like the SG-22. If anybody out there is printing and stuff, you just build a kind of fixture, and then you put the commercial materials just in it, and you're like, look, Mr. Media, it shoots, you know? But actually it's not very sophisticated, but the media doesn't care anyway. The template is, oh wow, it's printed, it's a gun, you know? So you're both helping each other lie, in essence. But this is some of the Baudrillard stuff. Like what was most necessary about those early days was we're like supplying this vital illusion that like, well, we all agree in this with this false narrative of technology that like, well, no matter what, there will be this progress. I'm just selling you this idea that eventually, you know, if this is just proof of concept, one day the real thing will happen. And so I was comfortable kind of being, you know, completely fabricating in both ways the idea.
I'm just taken by that. Yeah. So so you do that, and then you start. Well, actually, let me clarify for people. I'm sure there's some people in the audience who don't know exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Should we back? I mean,
well, we can do it right now. So the Liberator is therefore it's historic, right? But because it is the first what?
Well, that's just it. Like, I don't think it's historic, but what did I do? I sold it to museums. Right, I had media come down and do like professional photo shoots with it, and I was like, "This is the first 3D printed gun." But that also wasn't true, I don't think. Right? Surely there were printed guns before mine, but the idea was to like repetition and event. You know, like just with a little theory, it's like, okay, now I'm telling you, I'm historicizing this thing, and I'm telling you this is the first, and I'm making it an analogy because the Liberator was itself this farcical reproduction of this wartime thing from World War II. Probably anyone into 3D guns kind of knows the story of Liberator. So we were just farcically representing ideas, you know, from another time, and then saying, all right, you know, now a new timeline has begun. The world of 3D printed guns, right? I'm selling you this thing, but without fidelity to that idea, it wasn't necessary or true. And of course, now it somehow is, because a bunch of, you know, shit kickers got in behind me and were like, we are the gun printers, and this is the age of the, you know, and now it's a real thing.
So I mean, okay, so you're saying the postmodern piece here is that you created this narrative which made it historic, and the media
and they
cooperated with you because it's a news story. They get to demonize you and sell copies of their newspapers.
Not even demonize me. We're buddies. You know what I mean? Like we used to be anyway. But
They demonize
so like,
you.
who were the first people to sneak liberators onto trains, right? It was like Daily Mail journalists, in London.
Oh.
Like, who were the first people to sneak them into parliaments and stuff? Israeli journalists. It's like you're all colluding together. This is all in the work of Jean Baudrillard. Like, they don't wait for the event to happen. You get them 80% of the way there, they'll complete it for you. And, that's what I wanted too. We weren't really in the world of 3D printed guns in 2013. The materials weren't there. It was all kind of fake. Yet the media gets you past the finish line, because what I'm selling you more is the mass media construction of a printed gun. And I'm not acting like this is all some devious, sophisticated plan. I'm just saying this is the world you're living in. And it just so happened that the printers got better. They got cheaper. The materials became more available. And now we have something more like a world of 3D printed guns. Although I would say even now, not quite.
Now, do you think that would have happened without you creating that narrative?
Man, I think the most dangerous moment was like some autist was about to get there, and he was going to be like, oh, gee, look, isn't this great? I crafted a gun in my garage with my stepdad, and oh, shucks, it's just a tool. And I think the best thing we did was we're like, no, it's political.
Yes.
But even then, right, like that is proof of the death of politics. But then my only instinct was, again, I'm like 24, 25. I'm like, oh, I know I'll personify it. I'm like, oh, I'm this renegade, printed guns is like, it's an outlaw technique. And that seemed to help sell it to a bunch of alienated, disaffected dudes on the internet who themselves want to be, want to have some identity. And so that seems to be how it's continued from there.
You crafted a narrative which made it historic. I get that argument. It's a beautiful argument, very sophisticated. I've never thought about that. However, what you were doing was real, and it was, in fact, historic.
If we believe in these things, sure. I mean, look, there's a gun you can print called Liberator, and then there's a family of guns after it, and a family of guns after those that emerged from our forums. And now you go to DefCat, and there's dozens of independent developers and projects, hundreds and hundreds of related files and stuff. So there's, multiple ongoing projects, genealogies, and stuff. I mean, it is happening. Whatever we're saying it is, it's happening. But it could be a cul-de-sac in some history of materials development. I mean, it's not necessary that it is a part of political economy or history or something. I don't know what that means.
See, you've said, I'm trying to remember the words you've used, but this effectively makes gun control what? Moot? A dead letter?
I want to believe that. So, maybe not everyone here believes in gun control. I'm going to guess a lot of people here are gun control suspicious or
hesitant.
Yeah, gun control hesitant. Yeah, and I think this helps with that. And if there's levels it helps with. I mean, you see state lawmakers and Congress people and stuff. They all understand now this is at least a part of the coordinates of their, reality, their political reality. They all know you can print a gun now. That doesn't mean they're loud about it. And certainly the anti-gun lobby, Giffords, Brady, et cetera, they all know, and then they're working on this. They consider it a huge end run. And they feel like until they can cap that, they can't even get back to what they were trying to do in the 1980s. So we've postponed, we've quagmired those efforts. I think insofar as those efforts are real efforts, we've affected the real, But in another important way, I can't stand up here and be like, well, I didn't invent the gun, right? And I didn't invent the inventing of the gun. I mean, you can always make a gun. And these things are terribly crude implements, really, when you get to their facticity, right? And what's so beautiful about the AK, right? I mean, you can make it from a shovel in a barn, what I mean? It's the irreducible weaponization of, you could say, humanity, technology, what we've actually done is this kind of more abstract and really kind of superfluous, addendum to the history of guns and firearm technology. But I'm not trying to say it's worthless. In fact, I think really important things are happening in it. But some of those important things are theoretical, where I don't think, am I just talking to
Go.
You? Okay, well,
I love it.
What is a congressperson really upset about, I think? And I have some knowledge of this because I have to pay a lot of attorneys and when these congress people get upset. And it's not, I don't think it's the guns themselves. A lot of people make these kit guns and things, and that's upsetting. But I think it's the files for the guns. I think they're truly some of the first fourth order simulacrum, like in Baudrillard. There's no real implement that precedes them. It's the file for the gun that worries the congressperson, because there's just no concept of encapsulation or control.
They can't contain the files.
They literally they know it's liquid information and it's hopeless.
I love that.
And it's when a gun controller gets upset, he's like, downloadable guns. And what's upsetting him there isn't the gun part, it's the downloadable part.
Yeah. Right. So there's a moment, I don't think I've asked you about this, but so Defense Distributed 2012, Liberators brought to the world in 2013. And around that time, I think, right, the ATF called you in. Is that right?
Oh, my first act was with ATF. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a printer, my first printer in 2012. They took it away from me. And then I heard the ATF was investigating me. So I was like, well, why wait? So I just went to the ATF field office and I was like, I hear you're investigating me. that was a stupid thing to do.
Why?
I probably wouldn't do that again.
Why did you do that?
Because like I said, I was just looking for a fight at the time.
Yeah.
I might as well have it today, They all came in, started taking notes, It was really so stupid. But that's beautiful, right? You have to just be stupid, I think.
What did they ask you? How did it go? What were they wearing?
They had made a report. Like they had told me, this company Stratasys had made a report, and they had ratted me out to the feds.
Stratasys, you got your first printer from them, right?
This was some Israeli company that sells 3D. I'm not trying to get.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What did you say? Where was the company from?
Nothing, man. What? Anyway, they completely sold me out, and
the Hotep say redacted.
I forget, man.
For that,
me and Hotep Jesus fought all day yesterday when we were.
Did you?
Yeah, I was like. Anyway, I think it's fun, but they sold me out, and I can't believe that they had ratted me out of the feds and everything. I thought that was so unnecessary, but it was just a sign of things to come, because now it sounds completely appropriate, and if anything, restrained, because every company sells you out now for everything, But I've always feel like I'm 3 or 4 years early to cancellation than the rest of the public.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize I was encountering that early turbulence before everybody else.
You're a pioneer.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I mean, it's not looking good.
Well, so, all right. So, I mean, this is all fun and stuff, and you're heroic, and we love you for it. But I would imagine there's been a whole lot of stress and maybe a little fear and anxiety dealing with. I've never dealt with the government like that, so I don't know what it's like.
Is this wherever we want to go? Is if this needs to be therapy hour?
It's therapy.
I can tell you guys all.
I want to hear about your feelings.
No, I don't know.
I'm trying to make you cry.
Look, I don't really know where to place, this crowd and your effort and stuff in like Texas libertarianism or who these people are. Although I met some of you, the other night, but there seems to me like to be this friendly experience at a remove of the evil government, especially like in Texas, like the history of our engagement with Waco and and it's always our favorite to hate on the ATF, and at the same time, like we know that they're kind of lovable fuck ups and they don't really know, there's this mixture of narratives. Like it's either really Baphomet and this true like Epsteinian satanic plot, or that they've really got it all figured out, or in fact, like they're all kind of completely absent. And it's just an automatic process, it's really sociological in its construction. You can just replace any of them and it just all has this inertia of tyranny, regardless of their positive intentions. I take that second view more and more with my actual contact with the government. Like they literally never seem to know what's going on. And that's not an insult. It's like, I'm actually quite frustrated that they don't know, because I get engaged in these multi-year, I've been suing the State Department alone since I was 25 years old, and that they can't keep the narrative thread is just like really objectionable.
I'm sorry, how many 25-year-olds have sued the State Department?
And this is how you know I'm a 90s libertarian, by the way.
90s.
Like, I know, I'll sue the government. Then they'll respect my rights. So there's really nothing you can learn from me. But just here for the ego massage. But I'm not a zoomer, right? I'm not like, my cynicism isn't enough. I still somehow believe that like it's all possible, that like it's dumb enough and real enough in 20th century terms of tyranny that like it's still stupid enough to be overcome, but I'm not thinking of this radical indeterminate stupidity of like the next postmodern, like an AI stupidity. Imagine a stupid so stupid that it's like hyper stupidity.
Hyper stupidity.
And it does win no matter what. Like I've won so many times. I can't even, this isn't bragging or anything, but behind the scenes, I've won so many times, and yet it doesn't actually matter. They're like, well, We are sovereign.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, I forgot.
A reminder of who we are. Here's your subpoena. Yes.
It's like, yes, I see your point, Mr. Wilson, but. So in April, by the way, I had a really tough time in April because I won again. And this is like the third, fourth time that like the guns were actually freely available on the internet and everyone in the world was like downloading them again. And you could say, well, wasn't that always the case? Yes, of course, that's always been the case. But like I was able to share the stuff again. And, for big blocks of time, for many years, I've been kept from doing that under serious penalty, threat of a real penalty. And there I was again in April. The files were being shared all over the world from my website, free in the open internet. And the DOJ comes to us and they're like, yes, nevertheless, our position is this is illegal. But I was able to do that because the Ninth Circuit released me. And I went to the Ninth Circuit 2 times since 2018 on this question, for example. Does the State Department control this stuff? Went up 2 times, finally won, at great expense, I should say. I do win. Files are shared. And a minor thing, that I didn't even give it to the press. The press didn't carry it. You wouldn't know, right? And there's many places you can go and get the files to this day, no problem. But for me, a great victory. And yet, the Department of Justice approaches our mutual attorney and says, yes, but nevertheless, our position is he will go to jail. And I kept them up, But anyway, neither here nor there. I'm just saying, like, these, the comedy of it, the tragic comedy of it, it's like it's too pathetic to really even complain about. But yet that should give you some comfort because they just don't know. They're like you. And I remember when I was younger, when I started, the attorneys, like the deputy attorneys at DOJ, they would be older than me. And I would still, I would think it was ridiculous, but I would see that they were some years older than me. And I would say, oh, you poor fool, you careerist fool, And then some years later, like most recently this year, I would see the attorney was much younger than me. And I would be like, wow, And somehow, I don't know, time's passing, but like they're still just careerist fools. Like they don't care half as much as you do,
So I think one of the most amazing, really stunning outcomes of this or characteristics of it is that, as we said, you took on the State Department, or actually the State Department took on you, didn't it? Because let's talk about this. So this guy right here has challenged, what is it? This is so deep. It's pretty shocking. He challenged the sovereignty, I guess it is, of the United States government to conduct its own foreign policy. And that's why the State Department has gone after him for almost a decade now. So can you talk about, it's the International Traffic in Arms Regulations, otherwise known as ITAR. That's the law that he has violated, or well, they've alleged that he's violated. And so can we talk about this? I mean, this is this is very serious stuff. They can't go to they feel like they can't go to war with you around.
Or another way to say it is like we don't hear about national security in the story of like America or something until maybe after FDR, when this justification, national security or the national security state begins to kind of becomes the first order justification for like everything in that, I don't know, the large administrative state that FDR basically pioneered. And under the heading national security, I mean, that was basically it. Okay, you can say ITAR, State Department, whatever, but basically like the magic words are national security. It's too dangerous because the Taliban in Afghanistan can download 3D guns, right? This is literally a justification. Like if it's on the internet, the Taliban can get it. Therefore, it can't be on the internet. National security, and it ends up trumping kind of everything. And we have a ton of constitutional law over the years saying, well, no, in fact, there are many things before national security, the First Amendment, obviously being one of the best ones, and the ones even civil libertarians, ACLU liberals should, in another time, be able to agree with. But in fact, no, it's not true that the MIC and the national security state, the deep state, et cetera, they have the magic words, and those magic words win. It is funny though; it's a huge white pill when you see like American empire collapse in a weekend, in the desert, and then 90 billion in weapons or whatever is automatically transferred. Like not just light arms, but heavy arms, vehicles and stuff. So again, they have their magic words, and it's difficult to overcome those.
So I bet you there's going to be some questions. So if you want to start lining up, yeah, I knew it, and I bet you this will take a fair amount of time. So let's give it ample time.
What, the mics are in the back or something?
Yeah, we have one in the back.
Interesting.
We had to set it up that way.
I'm happy to continue to. Oh, I see.
Yeah. No.
And there's, news in the 3D gun world. I mean, a famous designer just died.
Yeah,
we just got news of his death.
Let's do that. Let's talk about what's been going on recently, like this year in the world, and then we'll go to the questions.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Catch us up.
I don't want to contradict your agenda, but
No. I'm asking you.
Yeah, who said that? Yeah, Mr. J. Starker. We just found out in a Der Spiegel article that he
died.
That he died in June.
He designed the FGC9.
FGC9,
which we will have a course on the FGC9 in January.
Designer of the FGC9. So I mean, he's like this movement is old enough now to have its, I guess, first martyrs and things. Old enough to where Imura went to Japanese prison. J. Stark is now dead, and that's as a result of. The German police, Austrian police got a warrant. It's not like he just randomly died, therefore he's a martyr. But he was clearly on the run.
Oh,
we found out that he died in June. And it's interesting. I mean, his motto was "Live free or die," and so I mean, he meant it. He sold it, and I think things like that, those characters, they matter more than the reality of the technology at the moment.
J. Stark was British, right?
No, I don't think so. I think he was
European,
Kurdish/German/Austrian or something.
But can we talk about this for a second? It's actually pretty interesting, and I think it illuminates how profound this is. So he designed, as I understand it, the FGC9, which, am I right? I think it's the most popular sort of 3D gun globally, right? Because it complies with many nation-state
its
laws.
Is better than a lot of American 3D gun design because it's like, well, okay, this needs to be a worldwide available gun concept. So the only components that you should be able to source must be just generic off-the-shelf components and not bulk groups that you can buy like in America, because worldwide you can really get nothing but springs and just random pieces of tube stock and stuff, if you're in like an Austrian hardware store. So, so this gun, in fact, I mean, we should credit the developers of the AP9 and the forebears of this gun. This gun just didn't come out of the air from J. Stark, and he'd be the first to tell you that. But what he delivered was a version of this hybrid gun from the internet that could truly be sourced and constructed from raw materials all over the world. And this gun is now found in Southeast Asia, the metropole, London, Canada, obviously the continent, Europe. And so that's proof of its superiority, I think. Everything else is 3D gun printers swimming in the American gun pond and just kind of remixing designs like from, like the CZ Scorpion or, these are things that only really Americans can take advantage of. And so J. Stark remembered the original objectives of Gen 1 3D guns. What's something that anyone can make anywhere in the world to deliver on the promise of the death of gun control. So rest in peace. Yeah.
FGC 9 stands for Fuck Gun Control 9. It's the name of the gun.
Down.
A few decades ago, private citizens used to be largely that. Private. What's changed? The internet, of course. Think about everything you've browsed, searched for, watched, or tweeted. Now imagine all of that data being crawled through, collected, and aggregated by third parties into a permanent public record. Your record. Having your private life exposed for others to see was once something only celebrities worried about. But in an era where everyone is online, everyone is a public figure. So to keep my data private when I go online, I turn to Expressvpn. Did you know that there are hundreds of data brokers out there whose sole business is to buy and sell your data? The worst part is that they don't have to tell you who they're selling it to or even get your consent. One of these data points is your IP address. Data harvesters use your IP to uniquely identify you and your location. But with Expressvpn, my connection gets rerouted through an encrypted server and my IP address is masked. Every time I turn Expressvpn on, I'm given a random IP address shared by other Expressvpn customers. That makes it much more difficult for third parties to identify me and harvest my data. And the best part is how easy Expressvpn is to use. No matter what device you're on, phone, laptop, smart TV, all you have to do is tap one button to get protected. So, if, like me, you believe that your data is your business, secure yourself with the #1 rated VPN on the market. Visit expressvpn.com/unregistered and get 3 extra months for free. That's expressvpn.com/unregistered. Go to expressvpn.com/unregistered to learn more. All right, we have a big line. So let's get going. First up. Hi. I'm sorry.
Kaleem.
I'm sorry. Kaleem.
Yes.
Right.
Hi, Cody. I have a question about your sort of overall strategy with Defense Distributed and your media strategy. The specific question is, did you think about doing it anonymously instead of, being Cody Wilson? So did you consider that? And would it have been possible? How would it have been different if you had, tried to do it as some, mysterious internet anon or group of anons?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I did. I thought of it that way. Okay, we'll have a name, we'll have a group, but you won't know our faces. Very Fight Club, and people have tried that since. And I think it's maybe more necessary now. But in the time I did it, the internet was still a more like open place. Cancellation and all these things weren't top of mind. You knew it was still possible, and we had seen the payments blockades like with WikiLeaks and stuff. So it had begun, but I thought it was more important. One, I felt like I was kind of more in the mainstream of culture. Like I felt like I was kind of, I don't know, like a clean cut guy or something in the beginning, like I'm not now, but I mean, I thought I was in the beginning. So I was like, wouldn't it be more interesting if I was like, look, I'm this guy, I have credibility because here's these, I studied this stuff. This is all legal. There's nothing you can do about it. And in fact, there was a kind of virtue terror in that, to borrow from like, I don't know, Zizek or something. It's like, it's scarier because I'm telling you, hey, by the way, this is the world you live in now. And here's how you can reach me and talk to me about it. That felt better to me. And then I knew that like, if my personality was established in a public way, I could be more public too in an ongoing way. So I imagined a career in it and not just a kind of dead drop where this was like, illicit information on the dark web, which would itself justify that police repression. Because of course you're always inviting a certain type of repression when you move the ball. So I thought maybe by just coming out and be like, it's legal, it's mainstream, deal with it, it would be harder to reckon with. Maybe that instinct was right, and maybe I should now just become, I should credit that and then just become anonymous like everyone else. But I actually think I'm in a privileged position, despite the difficulties now, because I'm probably the only gun creator now that you can come to and ask questions, because everyone else now has to hide from the surveillance and the repression. Thank you.
Great question. Yes.
Right. This might be a stupid question. I'm sorry if it's already been asked and answered, but I haven't heard it in the discussions. What about bullets?
Yeah, great question. And it's always the earliest question, with the 3D movement. Okay, fine, they're going to regulate bullets. And even the left says that. This was like one of the first salon responses to the Gen 1 of guns. It's like, fine, we'll regulate the bullets then. And to some degree, this has happened. And I don't mean in the way that like California always imagines it, this fanciful like case stampings and stuff. But Joe Biden just kind of with a stroke of a pen banned all Russian ammo. This was just a couple months ago. I mean, maybe like 6 weeks ago. No one even watched it, right? Because he's busy fucking up everywhere. You kind of miss every indignity just like passes you by. But something like 40% of all American ammo product, or like I don't know, the market of American ammo is Russian. And now a year from now that'll be gone. And that's a huge problem. There are only 2 primer manufacturers in the country of any consequence. And if you wanted primers today, if you wanted to place a blanket PO, you'd be waiting like a year or 2 years. It's a real problem. So I don't have any good answers other than there's a lot of ammunition in the United States of America. And that it's still possible to import, or at least right now, Russian ammo by way of third-party or proxy countries. And of course, the United States has this problem as well. What about ammunition? It won't let it dry up because the United States needs to push Russian ammo to its assets and proxies all over the world as well. So to some degree, like we're always downstream of the prime contractors, even in a world where the gun controllers are given their way and they say, huzzah, like big tobacco, we've tamed the beast. There will always be, I think, a large stream of ammunition, a big copper stream.
Thank you.
Fear not.
Another great question. I had never thought about that. Yes.
I think there's a secondary part. I'm sorry. There's a secondary part to this question, which is like, what about making the ammo, right? And I think that's fine. And that's probably what's intended first and foremost. That's hard, okay? You need a bottleneck cartridge manufacturing machine and stuff. It's hard to fake that stuff. And yet there are kids working on caseless ammo and stuff and have always been. Or you could see like creators like Tal Fleur de Mans, people who like pack shotgun shells and stuff. I mean, there's there's ways to get around it, where it's like, well, what I've made is technically 3D printed ammo. But again, I would say like you have to work with what is the field statutes of the regime before you. There's always going to be bullets from my point of view. I'm not quite as worried about it. So thank you.
Excellent. Yes.
What is your take on James Lindsay's his take on the phases of history from Marx and where we are in the phases of information history?
I don't like Lindsay in particular. I don't have a take on him then. So if I'm I'll go phases of history, but don't take it as a reading of Lindsay.
Yeah, and more about the idea of where we are in phases of history and information.
Baudrillard's restatement of the phases of history of the natural form, right? His materialism is the natural form, the commodity form, then something like the mass media, the mass productive form, and then his fourth order, which is this viral fractal form, this pure digitality, virtuality. I like that. I don't think it's exactly materialistic or social scientific. And in fact, what's important about it is how it's genealogy of cultural logic. So I'm not a materialist. I'm not wedded to it. And I like Baudrillard, in fact, because he's a critic of Nietzsche, of Marx in a Nietzschean way. If we're doctrinaire Marxists, it's its own kind of nihilistic matrix, almost a Christian matrix. But I don't want to upset Marxists in the room any more than I already do. So look, phases of history, sure. Natural form, commodity form, mass media, virtuality, fourth order simulacra. I believe in this. I believe that the most important thing I do right now is I render these 3D gun files that these kids give me. It's these pure, like if you go to the DefCAD Twitter, like what is it? There's no commentary. It's just the pure sign, just the pure image. There was no object that preceded it. It doesn't refer to anything. It is first. It is, in fact, the thing that they're trying to stop. It is the most important kind of, free radical component, the elemental component of what we're doing. So I still think in terms that are post-Marxian in this way. And I think the only thing that I can see in the future is something like, these fourth order simulacra from this description of the development of history.
Thank you.
I didn't know you were a critic of James Lindsay. He's one of our instructors. But we should talk about that.
I'm just claiming ignorance,
No. I'm just curious. And this is what we stand for. The conflict of ideas. We embrace it. Yes.
Yes. Hey, Cody. I had a question for you. I've been following your projects, Dark Wallet and then DefCAD and the whole thing. Dark Wallet's kind of dead. Not to throw any shade. I think everybody stepped away. But
it's like 10 years old now.
Yeah. But I love the idea. Anyway, my real question is about something you talked about on your previous interview with Renegade University with Thad, which was a project that might have still been in development. You weren't really ready to talk about it publicly.
Yeah, okay.
I was wondering, are you at a point where you could talk about that or give more details on what it's about?
I'll talk about it. Wait.
Did I do something wrong?
No, I remember we talked about it, and I was like so mad that I talked to you about it.
Oh, really?
Sorry.
Because I never do this because I like to wait till it's like he's like David's like, I'll say this about it, like in our it's not gonna. I'm not saying like it's the next Liberator or whatever. But like it's done. I've been working on it for ages. Oh my gosh, so much blood and sweat, and like I want to debut it when we do this thing at the end of the year, and I'll just say that like it's not gun related, right? It's related to machine learning. I'll give you that.
Oh.
Okay, that's the most I'll say about it. So.
Related to machine learning.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So let's.
If you want to work on it or whatever, if that's like if you're bidding for it, just talk to me after.
There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There we go. Told you, mutual aid. Let's talk about that. You after you got Defense Distributed up and running and you were becoming notorious. I mean, you started throwing bombs pretty regularly. So you did Dark Wallet. Can you just explain what that project was?
Yeah, my buddy Amir Taki was one of the first real developers in Bitcoin who kind of re-implemented Bitcoin and built libraries and stuff. He helped with, God, I'm forgetting all the wallets and stuff now. Just early Bitcoin, Amir was really where it was at. And we were always working together. We kind of aligned on our point of view, our philosophy. And I was like, I'd love to work with you, man, help you with a Bitcoin project. So I did Liberator. I got in a lot of trouble. And I was like, I don't just want to be in trouble and feel bad. Action is the cure to depression. And so we did the dark wallet, which raised a fair amount of money and helped people develop wallet technology. And at the time, I think one of the best ways of mixing Bitcoin, which I think is important and continues to be important. So that was dark wallet.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I just want people to know what you've been doing.
Yeah. I mean, our biggest project, our most significant project then came the next year. It was called the Ghost Gunner.
Right.
And it was basically like a remix of 3D printing technology, which we've become quite familiar with. But we repackaged it as a mill, a CNC mill. And milling, I thought, was like a gap in the market. Like a lot of people were like fanboying over 3D printed guns, but it was like, well, there's just as much need for the same footprint, but to work with metal. And that's really most of what I've worked on for like 6 years, because there was enough profit there. Again, it's open source technology and machinery, but we were able to sell it to the public at a profit. And then I was able to fund all these years of conflict with the State Department and stuff over the First Amendment protections of the files. And I just I stayed in that gear, and here and there, if I've made a profit, I've kind of experimented with, like I've said earlier now, machine learning and other things. But mostly I try to run DefCat. I try to be loyal to the intentions of our project from some 10 years ago. And I try to help people make guns.
So revenue from helping distribute 3D printed guns has allowed you to take on the government.
Yes, and this was a critique I've had of the kids for some time, which was like, well, you have to commercialize something, guys, something. And in fact, that's finally started to happen. Only in the last couple of years, the groups like Riptide Rails, Aves Rails, like the kids have figured it out. There's like, okay, there's these niches where I can sell you at least like locking blocks and rails and stuff that go into your printed Glock frame, or I'll sell you. I'm not coming up with good ideas now, but they'll partner up with the gun component resellers, and they understand that market power is somewhat necessary to drive their own R&D. It's not just handouts and give-me's and stuff. They all kind of spent 3 or 4 years thinking like, well, I just deserve money because, I'm so great. But no, you have to commercialize some aspect of what you're doing. And anyway, we're a little more developed, I'd say, commercially than the rest of the field, but they're figuring it out.
I think that's maybe the basis of your power in the world is actually you figured that out immediately from the beginning.
And that's not because I'm so great, I'm so smart. It's just like when you have a big problem, you need a big solution. And it was like, well, I'm going to go to jail in like 18 months. So I need to find some money and find some lawyers. So, necessity and all that. You have to, what does Nietzsche say? You have to become strong, you need to be strong. You must feel the need to become strong before you can become strong.
The will to power. The will to power. And then in 2017, Patreon.
Ooh.
Which didn't last too long.
It didn't. But, I still feel that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I asked all these alt-writers, they were getting kicked off Patreon. It's like, well, look, if I built something for you, would you join it? And they wasn't all alt-right, but it was mostly alt-right. And they all said yes. And I built this thing. And then I learned really the power of Visa and MasterCard.
So it would just, for people to know, it was Patreon. It was Patreon, right? For the hated.
Yes. Well, Patreon for the haters too, right? It was like, hey, just the saltiness of that name, right? My God, Patreon. How could you imagine that would even stay on the internet? In 2021, forget about it. But in 2017, it was like they hadn't quite built the architecture for completely wiping that off the internet yet. So beyond just Visa, MasterCard, it was, I got TMF'd by Visa, by the way, which is like the most blacklisted you can get in the payments industry. I've been riding that list for almost 5 years now.
Wow.
What else? I got, just kicked out of every bank, DigitalOcean, all these San Francisco companies who control the pipes, the tubes and the series of tubes. They just threw you off. I had to find all the, the old, really like 90s radical DNS and hosting providers and stuff. Like nobody give you a home. Like you really find out what's up. Then I got involved in my first real dialogue with the SPLC, and
oh, right.
Yeah. And Heidi Bertrich and these people, and it's like, well, here, we've sicked our intelligence project on you, right? And so they've got their own little anti-hate FBI where they're always finding out where you're at and reporting you and stuff. And like trying to measure your Bitcoin, and really amazing, actually. They're like, if you want to play on hard mode, just become, an alt-right tech company or whatever. And like, you're truly on hard mode. You know what you're made of. And I found out that I'm about, let's see, that was 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I found out that I had about 3 months worth of reserves to play, on that team. And then I've really spent years and years building alternative infrastructure ever since. Because it's like, if they want to turn you off, they'll turn you off.
So you're building alternative infrastructure too.
Well, you have to.
Yeah.
If you ride the TMF list and all these other things, banks, all these things, right? I have to get state charter banks. I have to get, I have to basically build my own tier 2 and tier 1 processing do payments origination and treasury management services with all these fintechs and actually use other people's banking licenses. And I would have never found all that out if I was just like, wow, I use Stripe and San Francisco is so great. And isn't it great to be part of the American religion and the new faith? And like, happy Juneteenth, like you're blind. You're not alive to like what's actually real. And like, there's just a handful of players who control your financial and digital life. And I'm grateful to have been terminated early so that I had time to build. Because now you can buy gun machines on the internet because I got canceled, not in spite of it.
Yeah, I forgot how profoundly canceled you were. And you were one of the first. Maybe.
Truly roundly canceled.
Yeah. And very early. I mean, you were one of the very first.
Yeah, I think it happened in stages. I began like really falling off in like 2017. Yeah. In personal ways too. I mean, oh my God, my personal relationship, just everything, just terrible.
What happened to your personal relationships?
Well, I don't know. I shouldn't have even said that.
Just in generalities.
Just like raw toxicity on like every level. I just couldn't hold anything together. We had a bunch of Texas libertarians that ran DD and it was just, you could tell that this transition in our own movement was happening around this time, right? From 2015 to 2017, there was this real divorce I think we all went through. We saw our people go left and go right. And it seemed that no one was really willing to stay in a place of curiosity or understanding. And I don't know why I'm phrasing it like this, but I'm just saying like a civil war happened for us beginning in 2015 that didn't quite reach the public until, maybe now. And that happened in our company, right? And in our personal relationships and in everything else, right? Like I would have, I don't want to name names, but we'd sit on back porches like these and be like, well, it's fine that Facebook is kicking all of these people out. This is 2015, right? Well, they're a private company. Isn't this how markets work? And I'm like, this is not an adequate answer. And this will not stop it when it comes to us. And, I hate to be right.
It's toxic. What's the Civil War over among libertarians?
Well, I'm only speaking for my own life. I mean, I can't speak for you, but the core questions, which are to some degree like distractions, but I mean, what is not just the role of the state, but like what is our own attitude toward, like the cultural war, like is it racist? Is it white supremacist to do X, to do Y? Like, should the government have the power to bring them here, to feed them? This kind of thing, like the immigration questions, the things that Trump kind of brought back into the Overton window and everything. They really roiled the libertarians. And I think proved the blind spots in libertarianism at the time. Like some type of economic populism, in fact, worked its way back into my thinking, right? Like it's not just enough to let your enemy completely win and sell you out and destroy your culture. And I'm not trying to score a point here. I'm simply saying the Anglo-American tradition of the right to keep and bear arms is an Anglo-American tradition, and it comes from almost nowhere else, at least the way I trace its genealogy. It's important to imagine it, to understand it as this specific cultural artifact from a place, from a time, from a people. I hadn't thought that way before 2015.
Wouldn't no law be better than the Second Amendment, though?
Well, there's so many points of view on the Second Amendment, but the most, I think, historic is the Second Amendment means nothing. It's just nice words that James Madison, put in there to decorate his Constitution, which was a project of centralization of power and control. And in fact, what they passed in their militia section in the Constitution was, in fact, the federalization of the militia. Like the law was, in fact, the federal government now has the power of controlling the people's militia. The Second Amendment is just a nice, it's live, laugh, love in the new American home. It's like, look, we'll never disarm the public or anything. It's just nice words. And it has no meaning other than what the judicial establishment has now brought to it over many generations. And that meaning has changed. What's most interesting about the Second Amendment is that perhaps it was most alive in the post-Civil War period, where like people took it seriously. We really were trying to get the freedmen arms. And so, I mean, it's fascinating. The 39th Congress was like, well, what about the Second Amendment? Isn't that a privilege and immunity of citizenship? And we were actually having that discussion in a way that even now we're not having it. But these are just phases in the history of a country. And I would say that the most real Second Amendment is, you can make a gun.
There it is.
You can download a gun.
There it is.
And you should keep that with you. It's a cultural artifact.
They can never contain it. They can never stop it. All right, back to questions. Matt.
Yeah, Cody, I just want to say first that you are very humble for someone who's done so much you're only like a year or two older than me, and I haven't done shit.
Don't think that way. Also,
yeah,
I'll tell you,
that is a shitty way to think.
Yeah, don't think that way. And I'll tell you another thing. I've been humbled.
Sure.
It helps to have been humbled.
Sure.
So if you want to go to a bar and get in a fight today, you'll feel a little bit more, humble too.
At first, I have to get the courage to get in a fight. But when you're saying how you were dumb enough to do, to think it was possible, that makes me think of a book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which is all about how in the beginner's mind, possibilities are endless, but in the expert's mind, they're few. That's like a direct quote, I think, from the first chapter. But the question I have is about Foucault's panopticon, and if a gun behind every blade of grass is parallel to the panopticon, and if there's like in some weird way some sort of libertarian authoritarian horseshoe going on there.
That's a fun question. So I'll answer in two parts. I hope to keep it succinct. So are we running out of time?
You're good.
Okay, great. So, on this question of being dumb enough to do it, by the way, I went out, this isn't just, a motto or just a Zen thing, but I agree with it. I went out at one point, I don't know, 2015 or something, 2016, before Trump, some secret, like Musk level, one of these like bunkers in Silicon Valley where they take the elect and then they subject them to stealth startup-y like mind games and stuff. And one of their operative theories, and this is out of the academy, but one of their operative theories is it deals with satisficing. If you guys have heard of this, there really is a difference. And like when they study Nobel Prize winners and these people who've like done the thing, it actually becomes like the most consistent represented point of the data where the person was like, literally, I thought I could do it. And I wasn't going to settle for not doing it. I just, I wanted to do it. But the satisficer, the kind of academic specialist, he corners himself into this minutia, this marginalia, where he's like literally in his mind with a series of compromises. He's like, well, I'll be the very best historical materialist of this. Do you know what I mean? Of like, or I'll be the very best biographer of. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, but and there's nothing against that, but it's like, well, if you want to move the needle, your objective should probably be to move the needle concretely. Like, okay, I want to discover this particle. And you have to literally be arrogant enough to try to do that thing and to not kind of settle for like, well, I'll study other related particles and I'll be quite a specialist in that field. This turns out to be true. So, and the second question you asked was libertarian, authoritarian horseshoe. Our favorite joke is that like, we're actually living in perfect anarchy right now. And it's just like, congratulations, but you're not, it's a big club, you're not a part of it. Anarcho-tyranny, like all these guys at the top, like they're perfect anarchists, they've just like beaten you up. But, the things that interest me are like, if printed guns, or let's say if, like I watch the colloquy that these anti-gunners put on all the time. Their most recent one was in NYU. You can see this was at the end of last year. And they're all studying like, well, what's our plan? How are we going to overcome, guns? And their approach is something like big tobacco. We're gonna pierce the placa, which is a federal statute. We're gonna make it so difficult, and then basically the guns will become not just safer, or not just like the squirt gun emoji or something, but like they'll incorporate all this technology. And kind of like in Foucault, like guns themselves are becoming technologies of the self, where okay, it will report when it's fired, or it will have the the biometric layer, right, where it will basically be a part of the Internet of Things, just like everything else, and then therefore an aspect or a dimension of your own surveillance, or like construction of yourself. So I do think guns have a destiny to become part of the technologies of the self, and there are heat maps already in Chicago, right, where guns go off. There's already like recording devices, and they can show you on Google Maps like where it happened and why. That's just a one remove away from the gun itself, kind of telling on you. And no doubt, like that's the set of market and legal incentives which have been built. And if this country can hold together long enough to get there, the technology seems to be destined for that commercially. But you can still hold out for civil war and total economic collapse. And maybe you won't get there.
Fingers crossed. Total civil war. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I was curious, because obviously 3D printed guns subvert the state rather than trying to engage it on its own terms by essentially letting a genie out of the bottle and removing power that way. cryptocurrency as a similar technology and trying to do the same thing kind of to the banking industry. I'm just curious, are there any other technologies that you see on the horizon that might be similarly disruptive or that maybe people should be focusing on other than those two?
Well, I've mentioned machine learning. Like, I don't believe in, general AI, for example. Like Peter Thiel has described AI as this kind of more communist, anti-libertarian power. But if you actually break it up into parts, if you just think of the problems that you can solve with GANs as just machine learning problems and orders of, how to teach something, basically how to teach processing or how to solve these little micro problems. I think machine learning is a libertarian technology. I can give maybe a couple of examples, but I think the deep fake is a nice crypto-anarchist method that has not yet been successfully employed in crypto-anarchist terms.
What's the deep fake?
The deep fake is a cultural idea, right? Like, what am I looking at? What do these style GANs produce? Well, if anything, they produce the more fake than fake, right? I can, for example, let's not say that I've done this, but you can take Kamala Harris's ebook and with 9 hours of audio, completely have a trained, TTS model of Kamala Harris. Say anything you want.
Ooh. My dream.
Or, obviously the video deepfake. We see this in the true Renegade style, right? In pornography first. There's been kids working on this for ages now where you can face swap and body swap and do all these things in limited, pornographic scenarios. And I think the deepfake has yet to take on a crypto-anarchist dimension. I'd like to get there and to be there, but unfortunately I'm kind of stuck in guns and stuff. So, if you want to work on anything, I would work on style GANs or TTS models or Tacotron, whatever. There's lots of these libraries and open repositories, on GitHub and stuff. It's all out there. And thankfully, the Chinese have no kind of moral qualms about doing it. Like Adobe, Google, all these places, they like develop AI ethics as a justification for hiding their software from you and, not actually publishing meaningful white papers and research. So just take advantage of the Chinese hive mind and do something political with it.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm shamefully ignorant of the conversation in the community, but I think the cat was let out of the bag last night. So
Can you be a little closer to the mic?
I'm a synthesis chemist in
Nice.
materials, and I just wondered, can you tell me a little bit about the 3D printed materials? What would you say is still lacking in the optimization of that material? And then is there any kind of characterization of the 3D printed material taking place, like X-ray diffraction? How do you analyze the final product?
Well, if you actually look at, so you're limited by the techniques themselves and not really the materials. It's just what materials will lend themselves to the techniques. So early 3D printing is FDM. It's like what polymers can we blend or turn into hot glue, and then basically keep stable enough in a heated build chamber to finish our prototypes. And so you're limited to like a thermoplastics or, in the early SLS technology, you're limited to photopolymers, these kinds of resins which photodecay very quickly and then become brittle. And that's in an age in the 80s and 90s where it's, this is more about not commercial goods or finished products, but just like, let me represent something physical in my hands and just get an idea of it. But the hacking we did was like, we said like, these materials are good enough. And so ABS plastic was good enough for the Liberator, for example. Although we've moved away from ABS, and now like the Chinese and the cheaper markets, they demand something like PLA plus, these ESUN materials, if you've seen these. So there's a lot of PLA. It seems to be like what the kids have standardized around for, let's say Glock lowers and things like that. And yet PLA is not very good for the other more explosive things, which we kind of intended in the original generation. So we get back to things like the Tallman series of nylon or nylon SLS printing, where now we're sintering the material. And again, the materials are good. There is something like ballistic polymer if you have the printers, but then the printers that you get aren't commercial anymore, or they're not available to a kid. And when I say a kid, I mean a kid, like a 16-year-old just shot himself in the leg in Virginia, last week, and he was making a Glock for himself. So your constraints are always political and not just material. They're like, I need a $300 printer. What materials can I use on that $300 printer? Well, that $300 printer means FDM usually. It doesn't mean anything else at the moment. Although there are cheap resin printers and SLA printers, but again, photopolymer. So I would say like the sky's the limit. I've seen like 3DO and these other metal printers, and then you have the guys that make the Carbon X, like they have these great materials like Onyx, which has like carbon, filament or at least chopped up filament within it, and they stand up to the material sheets of like aluminum, and you're getting things that like begin to approach metal. it's all there in combination. But really, it's kind of about what can some shithead on Twitter afford before it's political. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but all the materials are kind of out there and in some commercial use to some degree. Even 3D EO, these people use, powdered titanium. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, it's all there. It's just how can we justify a market use? How can we make it cheaper? When's it going to be available to a kid? I guess I'm saying something optimistic here, and I don't know that there's a limitation. It's just the kids recognize what they have access to, and they print what they know they can print with that. Until we can print like ceramics cheaply at home, we're stuck with this level of reality.
And then do you do any kind of characterization of the printed objects?
I'm not sure I know what you mean by characterization.
So are you interested in the integrity of the final product
Oh, sure.
Besides just shooting it off?
Most of what we do, though, and I would say most of what we do at DD is just finite element analysis, like will it work? Simulate it before you break it, But the kids do something similar. But again, their characterization is, hey, look, kids, and then they go throw it on the ground, and so it's a very crude. Yeah. And if I'm interested, sure, I'm interested. If you're saying like we would lend you scientific support, why not? But what we deal with is a lot of milling these days, and so we mill to military specification. I know it's going to work. I know it's already commercial and it already functions. But is there use for a material scientist with this group of people? Absolutely. If you'd like to be connected to them, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
So somebody else already asked my question. So I just want to say thank you for the queerification of the American right, because I think that's what you guys were discussing right at the beginning. Like you were like, what do you call a Baudrillardian right winger in America? And it's like, well, that's the queerification of the American right.
I'm all for it, I guess.
Like I think it's great. Like in like original queer theory, right? Not like what it's become, but like what Thad's really into. Like, hey, this is like freedom and like no, not like American right wing freedom. This is real. Like,
hey, this is not
go
just
do whatever the fuck you want.
I was delivered, an issue of Gun Fag magazine some years ago. I actually think it's important, right? I mean, not just
No, I agree completely. And I wanted to say thank you because I have some idea of what this has cost you, not directly, but I know exactly what it would have cost me. We're roughly the same age, and if I had like lived your life over the last 10 years, I know what that would have cost. And so, like, from everybody, I just want to say thanks for doing the work, because not everybody can make that sacrifice.
I mean, you'll have to ask me next week, but I'll still say it was worth it.
There you go.
All right. So obviously you're like a technologist and you understand this like history at play. You're talking about kind of like selling this thing to journalists, et cetera. And so going off of that, everyone knows that, well, a lot of people know that more people die from stabbings any given year than, say, like murder by gun. But just like Jack, the perfume nationalist, was saying yesterday, you can't really facts and logic your way out of all these like shitty little arguments, right? It's just bait when they present these kind of contrasts. So my real question is, to me, a part of people's revulsion to guns, like your default factory setting, like liberalism, it's just in you, but you can't really explain why. It's just kind of like icky to you. And so my question is, do you see this kind of like larger thing where knives are pre-industrial technology, but we're living in like a post-industrial society? Like we barely make shit in this country. Do you see like this larger thing of people kind of being generally revolted by these older technologies? Like everyone knows their food is factory farmed, but yet like we still eat this shit up if someone gives us a cronut. So like, do you see that like it's just a little too honest for people to see that like, yeah, maybe you are responsible for your own defense, no one's coming to save you, and that this is magnified across like many products, not just say personal safety?
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I agree with the central premise, by the way. There was always some overcoming of, you have to do some early childhood work with these reporters when they come in to just get them to hold the gun.
Yes.
And I agree with that. I've always seen that. There's this fear of some contamination when these bug people meet you. And yet they do overcome it, because at the end of the day, like there's still something fatally attractive about it. It's still fascinating. And right, even though like, okay, I'm morally opposed to the firearm, in reality in my life, and I'm not going to be a farmer, and I'm not going to be my own security service or my own military. I understand that, and that's real. I'm still going to go see the most, did anyone watch Squid Game this weekend, for example? People die every 30 seconds in that game and get shot in the head, and you're like, hell yeah. There's still this deep, seductive quality to the firearm. And so I try to always sidestep the reality of the policy debate when people are like, well, won't kids die or something? And I'm like, yes, every one of them is going to, you know what I mean? Like what's a famous meme that I remember is like, well, how many children have to die until you'll stop, Cody? And I'm like, again, everyone. And they're like, well, he's a monster, right? And you're just, you're playing it. It's just some other thing, right? Like what we're doing here, this is games, and it's not actually because at the end of the day, even the journalist doesn't want to just get down with you on that level. It's not just tedious, but it's boring. It's the run of the mill TV stuff. It's like, okay, but what am I actually selling you? I'm not selling you like, well, you'll be your own soldier, and isn't it great, American freedom and the flag? And no, I'm actually selling you like some terrible recombination of of all the familiar factors of this debate, which now threatens something new and from the future that shouldn't be here. Right now, it's cyberpunk for some reason, and then this reporter wants to fuck me. Like, what's happening? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, we all love Vice News, but I guess my real question is larger aesthetically. Do you see a revulsion to some of just the old standard ways we did shit, and people just cannot? There's something about liberalism that just creeps you farther away from these truths of you are eating animal products, yet people die.
Okay. I'll try to answer directly.
Do you see it in other technologies or aesthetics?
To your point about knives, for example, the Commonwealth, or at least the UK, has gone full bore. They're like, yes, even regulate the knives. Yes, where's your knife license? Where's your kitchen table knife license? There is no end to that logic of liberalism. It, by all accounts, at least the theoretical, relief that I have, it proceeds uninterrupted into this terrible miasma of just complete, and then there's something psychosexual required to destroy it, some kind of bacchanalian, I don't know, political economic thing is required. And so we're all kind of just praying for whatever that is, to release us from this, because we all hate it. I think we still all hate it, even if we're revolted. We've just learned, in a Pavlovian style to hate it. Even I feel it. I think if there's some credit to my success with navigating the earlier media, it's because I'm just as sensitive to these things as they are. I know how kind of oppressive and resonant the Black Rifle is to them, and how it threatens something of their twee, security. And so I'm with you, and I think I've relied on that. Although I don't have a better answer than that to the question.
Cool. That's cool. Thank you, man.
Great. I love that. Grant.
I know that many decentralized projects have rapidly accelerated over about the past year and a half, because people have been stuck inside their homes and haven't had a whole lot to do. So they're like, let's start building weird stuff online. In what ways has the coronavirus pandemic response actually been a boon to the kind of development and projects that you're working on? And do you have some sort of postmodern analysis of what is really going on right now?
Well, I can speak in direct terms, the coronavirus, the three social crises of that year of 2020, I guess Corona obviously being first, and then the summer of Floyd, and then the constitutional crisis with Trump. They all drove gun sales in a way that had not been done even under Obama. All record sales, record NICS checks and stuff. And when we were a part of that uplift, amazing. You couldn't stop selling the stuff. And we were just a beneficiary like everyone else in our space. So there's a lot of time, a lot of money afforded you that way. You're like, wow, this is great. It should be Corona every year, right? As Daniel was saying. But obviously that you have to pay the piper. And so then all the second order effects came, the logistical problems, supply chain stuff. And of course, we rely more than other gun companies on semiconductors. And the geopolitics there are what they are, very difficult. And there were times where we had to lie, cheat, and steal, hoard to get the semiconductors, to get the other things. You're relying on China, and I'm just as beholden to capital as everyone else. And in fact, now I'm crushed. I am the capitalist, how am I going to meet payroll? And now actually my decision-making is based on, 30-week PO lead times. And, now I'm not doing anything political at all in 2021. It feels like I'm not theoretical at all. I'm just trying to, make ends meet. So I felt like a coward in 21 compared to 2020. But, I guess you have to pay the piper. So yes, a lot of things began in 20, we were all kind of on some level in a hurry to lock down and just experience a new way of living. And now we're paying the price. And we've lost, the first half of the year, I lost like $250,000. It was terrible. Slowly accomplishing profitability again this year. And you wouldn't think so, right? Because we've done like maybe 1 million more in sales this year. And yet just the inflation has crept in, like the logistical problems, as I've said. It's just all like, oh my God, how this system was built in this just-in-time way, and it's outgroaning, and it'll wipe you out too. It doesn't care, So I'm sorry, I'm just playing capitalist in 21, and I have no real theoretical contribution other than to say, if you have no money, you have nothing to lose. And so you might as well, if you're stuck at home, get into whatever you can get into.
Indeed. Yes.
As a technologist, I'm curious what operating systems do you run? You're one of the people that is most likely to be, a lot of people thought most likely to be hacked by the shadowy Fed hackers that would put firmware viruses on your laptops. And I'm just wondering, what do you do that? Do you run anything with core root, open firmware? Do you run Linux? Do you just run Macs? Do you not care about anything, just run Windows like everybody? I'm really curious. I wanted to ask you for
Sure. It's a mix of everything. You just are in the world first, so I knew I was deeply, deeply hacked in a way I could never overcome in 2014. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I remember that.
Deeply hacked. And
it was nice.
I had, oh God, I'm forgetting these famous Bitcoiners' names, but at the time we discovered some of those SSL hacks and stuff in 2014. And they were like, yeah, bro, look at all these exceptions I'm finding. Yeah. Sitting in my apartment being told by famous Bitcoiners, yeah, dude, like you're hacked all to hell. Look at this, look at this, look at this. I know. Like I said, I visited Assange in the asylum in 2014, 2015. Same thing, right? He'd show me all the ways he knew he was hacked. And you just know that. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you're done. It simply means, okay, well, look, on this machine, we'll keep this air gapped. The machine shop won't connect to the internet. We'll, on this thing, we'll just make sure that this team deals with it, and they just bring it physically to the shop. And okay, make sure that you develop in Unix. Okay, I use every operating system, of course. At first, when we built Ghost Gunner, I could barely afford to have it deployed to anything other than Windows, 7 machines. But I got better. Eric Raymond helped us out with Linux. We got, I don't know, we just don't, you just do what you can, and I'm not some security state. I can't afford defense at this level, but eventually it's like, okay, I'll work with Fortinet. We got a FortiGate. Okay, here's our failover stuff, multiple ISPs. Here's a Viasat connection for this thing. You just make it complicated, sandbox things, virtual machine, just everything that you see online. And then you just slowly move forward, because the other aspect of this is, you're hacked to hell, but they can't do a fucking thing to stop you. It still makes it to market.
Right.
And if it didn't with me, it's the defense of open source technology. It's all out there. It can all be recombined. There's nothing that you really need from me. Even my number one product is completely open source. So I don't know, move the ball. Don't worry about who's watching.
And what do you think about these new small servers people are coming out for decentralized social media and stuff?
Sure.
Running Mastodon servers off a little box. Like I just bought one.
Sure. I think it's admirable. I don't know if you're reading Yarvin. Probably a lot of people here aren't reading Yarvin at the moment. But, the portability of user information and the open framework for, these types of social media server standards and stuff, I think that all makes sense and is a key linchpin to kind of overcoming the Googleplex, the Fangplex. I think it's all right. And I don't know why I'm sounding patronizing. I think these are good things. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you recommend one that you think you've known or you've used, interacted with?
Ultimately, I do recommend one, but I think there's lots of reasons why the internet didn't evolve in that direction anyway. We've had lots of opportunity over the last 30 years to have a personal server, and it didn't happen, right? So maybe a new way of looking at it, like Urbit or something, where you can spin it up very quickly on a general computer, and yet all the techniques are still there for a personal server, personal internet. So maybe that's a compromise.
Urbit is really cool. You all should all check it out if you care about internet liberty.
We are pro Urbit at RU. Yeah, I know those guys. And I was actually going to do, right before Corona, I was going to do an event for them. I was going to moderate a big launch sort of thing. So yeah, Urbit, check out Urbit. Very interesting. They're kind of trying to reinvent the internet in a very deep way.
And where can we read about Eric S. Raymond helping you? I had no idea he did that.
I wonder if I'm telling tales out of school, but he endorsed us very early on, and over the years has been a great resource on Linux.
Thank you. Okay, we got just a few minutes. We're actually a little over time, so yeah, Jeb's telling me to speed it up.
I remember back in 2008, 2012, knocking on doors in support of Dr. Paul, and these idiots who had their NRA stickers said, well, I'm voting for McCain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when are gun owners going to stop supporting people who are not their friends and start supporting sincere advocates of gun rights? I mean, stop giving money to the NRA and give it to GOA. I mean, is that ever going to happen, or are gun owners going to continue to be the dumbest voting bloc in America?
It's a great question, but I bet you're seeing it because the NRA is in like a huge disrepute now. Of course, they just reelected LaPierre, but everyone, their membership fell off, and people are to some degree choosing GOA now. But maybe more to your point, like I remember writing an essay in 2015 or something about how, hey, it's probably time to stop worshiping the military gun voters. Like they hate you, this empire hates you. And with Corona, especially in the last 2 years, I think you're seeing it. I think red state America, especially the people who body global American empire, understand that it hates them and is not for them. It's not of them. Now, I'm not saying that divorce is going to be finally possible in some way. There's always going to be the Marshall attitude, but I'm seeing it. And I bet you're seeing it too. And it's easier now to say things like, yeah, the military sucks. And red staters think that way, feel that way. And they know that on some level, a civil war scenario is contemplated where, yeah, we have to oppose. And that's in fact always been there, in the militia undercurrent, the blue helmets and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We know that actually they're going to sell our country out to globalists. And it's the vocabulary, the grammar, right? It's all there. It's just, I think it's in more practical use now with the vaccines and COVID and the fact that, Milley and all this stuff he's talking about. And I know this is just easy Tucker Carlson type cultural points, but when he's talking about white rage, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all these red staters are something's wrong. And they feel it. I see it. Yeah. Easier to say that now. I mean, I think I wrote that thing for T-Tag at the time, and the editors almost wouldn't publish it because I was like, hey, stop sucking the MIC's cock, you guys. And they were like, how dare you? That thin blue cock. And it's not quite that way now. So.
Thin and short blue cock. Anyway, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Cody Wilson.
Thank you.
This is the Unregistered Podcast, and I am Thaddeus Russell. To become a member of the Unregistered Underground Supporting Listeners Group, go to patreon.com/unregistered.